Alright, let's jump right in here. I'm going to cover this tray with parchment paper before I put my silicone mat on it, just because I want to protect the tray, and sometimes the resin will run off the silicone mat, so double protection. I'm doing it on this tray just in case I want to move the project out of my room or off of this table, whatever. It just makes the project easier to move if it's on a tray. And here's my nasty old resin cup. I just reused the same cup to mix my resin in like over and over. And here is my resin that I have covered with a bag because this is not the resin I normally use and I can't stand the way this stuff smells. Like, it stinks just sitting with the lids on the bottles. Anyway, I am going to mix up 120 milliliters of resin here. Just follow your resin directions. All resins are different. This one is 1-to-1, so 1 part hardener to 1 part resin. I like to start off with the hardener in the bottom of the cup first, especially with this brand of resin, because the hardener it's more liquid, as you'll see in just a second when I get to the resin. Here it is. The resin part is super thick, and I just don't want to wind up with globs of it that don't get mixed in, settled on the bottom. So I always put the hardener in first and then put the resin in on top of that. Another little thing is you want to make sure you really get everything out of your measuring containers, because resin can be really finicky, and if you don't mix stuff in the exact proper ratios, you can get weird sticky spots that don't cure right, and that is not what you want. So make sure you really scrape your measuring containers out into your main container. And now you're going to mix and mix and mix some more. The point is, you want to mix it really well. Make sure you're getting all the sides, the bottom, everything. You really want to mix your resin super well, or it won't cure correctly. Now, I've got a mix of molds here. Some of these I made myself from crystals I had on hand, and some of these I bought in a set from Amazon, and I'll leave the link below. These are the materials we're going to be using for add-ins to give us the fractured effect. And this one is, as you can see, shaved ice, which I got for $5, but then I found this giant bag of the same stuff at Dollar Tree, and as you can see, it really is like the exact same stuff. So around Christmas, Dollar Tree has this stuff out. I recommend getting some. The other thing I use is this Angelina film. You can also use like cellophane for Easter baskets and stuff. The main thing is when you crumple it up, you want it to have a little bit of a 2 color at least. You want it to refract different colors. You don't want it to be just one color. So, you know, the iridescent, holographic kind of look is what you're looking for. And now this stuff I'm just going to cut into a bunch of thin strips. They don't need to be uniform. In fact, it's probably better if they're not. You just want to get yourself a good little mix of different sizes of strips. Just don't cut them too small. Now I want these to be short enough for my crystals, so I'm also going to cut the length down a little bit. Now we're going to start filling all of our molds with the resin. I recommend drizzling the resin in, especially if you have something like these. There's a little point at the bottom of this crystal. If you don't drizzle the resin in carefully, you could wind up getting an air bubble where that point is, and the point won't come out, and that's not what you want. But also drizzling it in gives a chance for some of the air bubbles to come to the top and keeps you from getting giant air bubbles trapped in the middle of your mold, which again is something you don't want. And as you can see, same thing, drizzling. This one particular mold has a lot of little tiny points, so I really want to give it a good light drizzle first before I fill it to make sure that plenty of resin runs into those low points. Are you guys getting sick of watching me drizzle resin? Yeah, let's move on. So after I get these all full, I notice that my table and probably the mold, it's kind of old, is not letting that set exactly flat. So I'm just going to kind of shim it with a couple of popsicle sticks. You want it flat. You don't want your resin running out of your mold all over the place, basically. And here I am using one lighter to light another lighter. After you pour your resin, you want to give it a pass with either a heat gun or a lighter because that'll pop a lot of your bubbles. A lot of the bubbles will rise to the surface, and this just pops them. You don't want to hold the lighter on them too long, and I'm trying to get up close enough here that you can kind of see. It's hard to see, but it is popping a bunch of those little surface bubbles. And I'll do this a few times as the resin cures. A pressure chamber is really the best way to get bubbles out of resin, but I don't have one. So starting with the flat style crystals, basically the crystal clusters, that's what I use the shaved ice for. And you don't want to go crazy with it. You just want to add like a light sprinkling across the surface here like I'm doing. Now, as resin cures, it has a tendency to draw anything that's sitting on its surface down and into the middle. So I'm just kind of pushing some of those flakes down into the resin here so that they don't all wind up clumped in the middle of my resin when it's cured. Same thing on the smaller clusters, and then we're going to take these little strips that we cut and we're going to put them in our long crystals. Now you want to pay attention to the direction your crystal is going. You want these strips to be parallel with the length of the crystal. You'll kind of see what I mean here. Like this one, it's up and down, the mold is up and down. So I'm going to put these strips in up and down. You can put as many or as few as you want. The more you play with this, the more you'll get an idea of what you like. And then I'm just pushing the tails of the little strips down in there because I don't want them hanging out the bottom of the crystal when it's done. And now this mold is long ways, so we're going to lay the strips in there long ways, like, horizontal. It's the same basic idea as we just did with the other one. And again, you want to make sure to push the pieces down. This particular resin is really thick, and I really wish I had pushed these pieces down in there more, to be honest, but I mean, it still worked out. And now I'm going to cover these to keep them safe from cats and dust and everything else, and just let them set for the night. The next day, you can tell the resin is set when it's hard and not sticky, and that means it's time to unmold. And here's one of the clusters. And a few of the little crystals. And you can see how they have that shimmer inside them now when the light hits them. It looks kind of like they're cracked inside a little bit. Taking the crystals out of the molds I made a little bit more difficult, but they still look nice. And when you're done, you're going to have a nice little collection like this. Now, I know I normally do my videos with like an opener where I sit in front of the camera and talk to you guys, but I have like this really messed up allergy eye that looks disgusting this week, and I've decided to start doing a closer. So, welcome to a montage of the animals in my house. In this closer, I would like to give a few closing thoughts. Mostly, when you work with resin, make sure you wear gloves, you work in a well-ventilated area. It really doesn't hurt to wear some kind of respiration mask and some goggles also, because you can develop a resin allergy at any time, and that can be really nasty. It's just best to avoid contact with it as much as you can. I hope you enjoyed this. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. And if you missed last week's video with the skull, I will put a little card up here. These crystals are going to be part of a bigger project with this skull, and with a few more of the upcoming videos, this is all going to come together into something really cool, so make sure you watch this whole little series. I think you guys are going to like it. See you guys next weekend.